Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that today could be the turning point of your life, not because something extraordinary is waiting outside, but because you finally decide to master the inside. Every sunrise is a silent invitation from your Creator. Here is another chance to begin again. How you respond to that invitation shapes everything that follows. The first few moments after you open your eyes carry the power to either elevate your spirit or drain your energy. That's why a true believer never lets the morning pass carelessly. They know the morning is not just the start of the day, it's the start of their destiny. Stay with me till the end of this speech, because by the time it ends, you'll realize that the way you start your day can change the way you live your entire life. The power of the first hour after waking is one of the most underestimated forces in our lives. It quietly determines how our day unfolds, how our emotions settle, and how our choices align with our values. For a believer, the first hour is sacred. It is a divine gift wrapped in stillness and clarity, offering a chance to reconnect with the purpose of existence before the world begins its noise. What many people fail to realize is that the first hour of the day is not just a routine, it is the seed that grows into the entire day. If that seed is planted with gratitude, discipline, and faith, the entire day blooms with positivity and strength. But if it begins with chaos, distraction, and neglect, the rest of the day often mirrors that confusion. When you open your eyes each morning, you are given a silent message from your Creator. You have been chosen to live one more day. Every sunrise is not just the rising of the sun, it is the rising of an opportunity to rewrite your story. The true believer understands this deeply. They don't wake up with irritation or boredom. They wake up knowing that this first hour is the golden hour, a sacred window in which the heart is most open, the mind is most receptive, and the soul is most honest. It's the hour where one decides, will I spend this day in worship, awareness, and purpose, or will I allow the world's noise to hijack my peace? The first hour is not simply about time, it's about direction. If you set your direction right, your day will flow smoothly. Even when challenges arise, think about a compass. 1 degree of error in the beginning leads to miles of deviation by the end. The same is true for your morning. If you begin in distraction, you will lose clarity. If you begin in remembrance, you will find strength. A true believer values the first hour because it sets the tone for everything that follows. They understand that how you start the day is how you continue it, and how you continue it is how you end it. Most people wake up and immediately reach for their phones, scroll through messages, or dive into social media. The result, their mind is hijacked by anxiety before they've even spoken to their Creator. But a believer knows better. They begin their morning not by connecting to the world, but by connecting to the one who created the world. They greet the day with remembrance, gratitude, and humility. The peace found in that moment cannot be replicated anywhere else. It's not about rituals, it's about grounding yourself in something higher than your desires and distractions. The power of the first hour lies in what it does to your heart. It cleanses it from the residue of yesterday's worries and fills it with a renewed sense of purpose. When you start your morning with faith, you find yourself guided throughout the day, even when things don't go as planned. You respond with calm instead of panic, patience instead of anger, and hope instead of despair. That's because your first conversation wasn't with people, it was with your Lord. Your first thoughts weren't of problems, they were of blessings. This transforms your entire mindset. There's also a hidden spiritual wisdom in the silence of early morning. When the world is still asleep, there's a tranquility that allows you to hear what your heart has been trying to say. The believer uses that silence to realign, to reflect, and to prepare. They use those early minutes not to rush, but to renew. They know that the first hour after waking determines whether they walk through the day restless or at peace. If your morning begins with spiritual awareness, you will carry that energy into your work, your relationships, and your decisions. You become unshakable because you have already anchored yourself before the day began. The first hour also reminds us of accountability. Every new day is a continuation of our life's test. The believer doesn't take that lightly. They see the morning as a checkpoint, a moment to assess where they stand and what they must improve. Instead of rushing blindly into routine, they pause to set an intention. Today I will live consciously. Today I will speak kindly. Today I will be grateful. These small commitments made in the quiet of the morning create ripples that influence every action and every thought that follows. In truth, the first hour of your morning is the mirror of your soul. It shows what matters most to you. If you fill it with remembrance, gratitude, and discipline, your day will reflect peace and focus. But if you fill it with distraction and negligence, your day will reflect confusion and emptiness. The believer's secret is simple. They honor the first hour as a sacred trust. They treat it as a meeting with their purpose, not just another start to a busy schedule. And when you learn to guard that first hour, to protect it from the noise of the world, you will find that every day becomes a day of victory. no matter what challenges come your way. The moment a believer opens their eyes each morning, before the rush of thoughts, responsibilities, and ambitions flood the mind, the very first emotion that should arise is gratitude. Gratitude before goals is not just a mindset, it is a declaration that your heart is alive with awareness of the one who gave you life. It is an act of worship that happens before you even rise from your bed, a silent acknowledgement that every breath you take, every beat of your heart, and every new dawn is a gift that could have been denied but wasn't. When you begin your day this way, everything else you pursue, your work, your dreams, your relationships, falls into its rightful place. Gratitude realigns your heart before you step into the chaos of the world. It reminds you that life itself is not a guarantee. It's a blessing renewed every morning. Gratitude before goals changes the energy of your entire day. When you wake up and your first thought is thankfulness rather than complaint, your entire perspective shifts. You no longer see obstacles as burdens but as opportunities. You no longer compare yourself to others because your heart is already content with what you have. Gratitude softens the ego. It humbles you, grounding your soul in appreciation rather than anxiety. Many people begin their day by chasing success, chasing recognition, chasing perfection. But the believer knows that no chase will bring peace unless the heart first finds contentment in the giver of all things. Gratitude is that quiet anchor that keeps you steady, even when life feels uncertain. When you start your morning by thanking your Creator, you are not just saying words, you are aligning yourself with reality. You are admitting that you control nothing, that every outcome is a gift, and that what you have today is enough for now. It is an act of spiritual maturity to pause before ambition and acknowledge the source of all ability. Gratitude doesn't mean you stop striving, it means you strive with peace instead of panic. The believer who starts with gratitude approaches the day not from a place of scarcity but abundance. They don't say, "I need more to be happy." They say, "I am happy to have been given another chance." That simple shift transforms how you think, work, and interact with others. Gratitude before goals is also protection. It protects your heart from arrogance, your mind from greed, and your soul from dissatisfaction. It's easy to wake up and think of everything you need to achieve or fix, but it's powerful to wake up and think of everything you've already been given. Gratitude turns your attention from what's missing to what's present, from what's temporary to what's eternal. When you begin your day by saying, Alhamdulillah, you are placing peace at the foundation of your day. You are reminding yourself that no matter what happens, you started in remembrance. And anything that begins with remembrance cannot end in regret. The beauty of gratitude is that it multiplies what you appreciate. When you thank the one who provides, you are promised more contentment, more strength, more clarity. But when you neglect to acknowledge those blessings, even abundance feels empty. Many people wake up with everything they could ask for: health, family, opportunity, yet still feel a void inside. That void exists because gratitude has been replaced by entitlement. The believer's heart, however, remains light even in difficulty because gratitude gives them a reason to smile through the storm. They see blessings not only in ease but in hardship too, recognizing that every challenge carries hidden wisdom and mercy. There's something deeply humbling about waking up and realizing that while millions of hearts stop beating during the night, yours continues. That alone is reason enough for gratitude. It's a moment of quiet reflection that reminds you that life is fragile, temporary, and precious. When a believer wakes up and immediately thanks their Creator, they start their day with humility and peace. They know that every goal they pursue afterward is secondary to the fact that they've already been gifted with the greatest blessing, another day to live, learn, and seek forgiveness. Gratitude before goals is not about denying ambition, it's about purifying it. When you are thankful, your goals become more meaningful. You no longer seek success to prove yourself to others, but to serve with sincerity. You no longer chase wealth for power, but for purpose. Gratitude purifies the intention behind every action, turning your daily grind into a form of devotion. And when you start with a heart full of gratitude, you discover that the smallest things, a sip of water, the warmth of sunlight, the smile of a loved one, carry immense beauty. Life feels lighter, the world feels brighter, and even hardships feel purposeful. So, before you plan your day, take a moment to pause. Sit quietly. Feel your heart beat. Breathe deeply. Whisper a thank you, not just for what is perfect in your life, but even for what is painful, because both are signs that you are still being shaped and guided. When gratitude precedes goals, faith precedes fear, and peace precedes pressure. That is the mindset of a true believer, the one who begins every morning not with demand, but with devotion. Purity of intention is the unseen force that gives meaning to every action a believer takes, especially at the start of the day. When you wake up each morning, you are given a new page to write upon, a fresh opportunity to decide what kind of energy, purpose, and sincerity you will carry into the world. Before your feet even touch the floor, your heart must make a choice. Will today be driven by ego, by worldly desire, or by genuine sincerity for the sake of pleasing the one who gave you another sunrise? That single moment of internal honesty sets the tone for everything that follows. Purity of intention is not something you announce to others. It's something you quietly commit to within yourself. It's the whisper between you and your Creator that says, everything I do today, I do for you. Each morning, we are tested by distractions that seek to cloud that purity. The world constantly tempts us to act for recognition, applause, or comparison. But the believer understands that no matter how small or hidden an act may be, when done sincerely, it carries eternal value. Purity of intention transforms the ordinary into worship. A task as simple as greeting someone kindly, earning an honest living, or studying for knowledge becomes a sacred act if done with the right heart. Without that purity, even great deeds lose their worth. It's like offering a beautiful gift that is empty inside. It may look impressive, but it lacks soul. That's why the first act of a true believer every morning is not to plan what to achieve, but to purify why they wish to achieve it. Purity of intention is what separates exhaustion from fulfillment. Many people work hard every day but end each night feeling empty. They chase dreams without purpose, success without meaning, and achievements without peace. Their goals are fueled by comparison, not conviction. But when your intentions are pure, every step, no matter how small, feels purposeful. The believer wakes up not to impress the world, but to serve it. They don't seek validation, they seek value. Their efforts are not for people's praise, but for their Creator's pleasure. That quiet shift in motivation transforms anxiety into contentment. You stop asking, will they notice me? And start asking, will he accept me? That's where peace begins. Every morning is a spiritual checkpoint, a time to look inward and realign your intentions. The believer knows that sincerity cannot coexist with arrogance. So before stepping into the day, they cleanse their heart of pride, jealousy, and hidden motives. They remind themselves that what truly matters is not how the world measures success, but how their Creator measures sincerity. When you begin your day this way, you approach every task differently. You work harder, not for praise, but for purpose. You show kindness, not for reward, but for compassion. You forgive, not because it's easy, but because it purifies the heart. This inner discipline is what gives believers a sense of calm, even in chaos. They know their effort is never wasted, because it's anchored in truth. Purity of intention also brings clarity. When you are sincere, you see life more clearly, and decisions become easier. You stop overcomplicating choices, because your motive is pure. There's no confusion when the heart is clean. You stop worrying about how others perceive you, because your only concern is whether your actions are pleasing to the one who sees all. That freedom from external validation is what gives believers their strength. They move through the day with quiet confidence, knowing they are guided by sincerity, not by the shifting opinions of others. This purity gives direction to your goals and peace to your efforts. It becomes your compass in a world full of distractions. Yet, maintaining purity of intention is not a one-time effort, it's a constant struggle. The believer must guard their heart daily, because intentions can shift easily. That's why every morning begins with reflection. The believer asks, why am I doing this? And keeps asking throughout the day. This self-awareness protects the heart from corruption. Without it, even acts of worship can turn into acts of pride. But when sincerity remains the foundation, every action, no matter how simple, is infused with light. Purity of intention is also what connects you directly to your Creator. He doesn't look at your wealth, your status, or your achievements. He looks at your heart. That is why a believer can wake up with nothing in their hands but still possess everything in their heart. Their purity gives meaning to their day, even if their circumstances remain unchanged. The peace that flows from sincerity cannot be bought or borrowed. It must be cultivated in those quiet morning moments when you choose truth over image and humility over ego. So before you rush into your schedule, pause and purify your heart. Ask yourself, why am I living this day? What am I truly seeking? Let your first intention be for the sake of goodness, growth, and gratitude. When your intention is pure, your day becomes purposeful, your actions meaningful, and your heart unshakable. The believer who begins with a clean intention walks through the day not just doing more, but becoming more sincere, more grounded, and more connected to the one who sees every motive behind every move. That is the essence of starting your day like a true believer, with purity that turns every breath into worship and every moment into meaning. Gratitude is the heartbeat of a believer's morning. It is not just a polite word said out of habit. It is an awakening of the soul. The moment a believer opens their eyes, they recognize that life itself is a gift renewed. No matter how tired, burdened, or uncertain one feels, the first realization must be this: I have been given another chance. Gratitude transforms that simple awareness into energy. It reminds the heart that every sunrise is proof that the Almighty still believes there is something meaningful left for you to do, something beautiful left for you to experience, and something valuable left for you to become. When gratitude fills your morning, your day begins with strength rather than stress, with purpose rather than pressure. Too often, people wake up and rush straight into complaints about their jobs, their routines, their responsibilities. They forget that millions did not wake up at all. Gratitude is not about denying hardship. It is about recognizing mercy in the midst of it. A believer starts their morning not by focusing on what is missing, but on what remains. The air in your lungs, the ability to see, hear, move, and think, these are silent blessings that we overlook daily. Gratitude makes the believer aware of how much abundance already exists in the simplest things. When you truly feel thankful for being alive, even before checking your phone or stepping out of bed, you realign your heart with peace. That simple act of acknowledgement attracts divine contentment throughout the day. Gratitude in the morning is not passive, it is active. It's not merely saying thank you, but living it. When you feel grateful, you carry yourself differently. You speak more kindly, you forgive more easily, you complain less. Gratitude redefines your perspective. It turns routine into worship and struggle into growth. The believer who begins the day with thankfulness walks lighter because they are no longer burdened by comparison. Gratitude teaches you to stop measuring your life against others and instead start measuring it against your past self. You begin to see progress, not perfection. You start to notice how far you've come, how many storms you've survived, and how often you were guided even when you didn't realize it. When you cultivate gratitude, it becomes your morning armor. Life may not always give you what you want, but it always gives you what you need to learn, grow, and become wiser. Gratitude sharpens that understanding. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" a grateful heart asks, "What is this teaching me?" That single shift changes everything. The believer views every challenge as an opportunity to strengthen faith and every delay as a hidden blessing. Gratitude keeps arrogance away because it reminds you that everything you have, health, time, family, or faith, is not earned by entitlement but granted by mercy. True gratitude also connects you to your Creator in the most intimate way. It's an acknowledgement that you are not self-sufficient. Every heartbeat, every breath, every opportunity is sustained by His will. When you begin your day with gratitude, you place your trust where it belongs, in the one who never fails you. You no longer rely solely on your plans because you recognize that your success is a result of divine generosity. Gratitude in the morning, therefore, becomes a form of spiritual surrender. You start your day not demanding, but appreciating, not worrying, but trusting. That mental and spiritual state gives the believer a calmness that others cannot understand. Gratitude also has a practical power. It changes how you handle people and problems. When you begin your day thankful, you respond with patience instead of irritation. You see blessings instead of burdens. A grateful person attracts peace because they radiate it. They become someone who uplifts rather than complains, who contributes rather than criticizes. Gratitude doesn't just change your day, it changes your character. It softens the heart and clears the mind. It gives you emotional resilience because when your heart is trained to see goodness even in difficulty, no challenge can break you easily. But gratitude requires awareness. It's easy to say you're grateful while living unconsciously. That's why a believer intentionally pauses in the morning, before the rush, before the noise, to reflect. They take a deep breath and remind themselves, "I woke up. I can still change, still love, still pray, still try." That reflection anchors the heart. It fills the mind with peace that no worldly achievement can replace. Gratitude becomes a form of morning meditation, conversation between the heart and its maker, one that renews faith and strengthens hope. Every morning is a silent message from your Creator. You still have time. Gratitude is your response to that message. It is saying, "I acknowledge your mercy, I see your generosity, and I will not take this day for granted." When you live in that state of appreciation, even your smallest actions gain meaning. A smile becomes an act of worship, work becomes a service, rest becomes a reminder of blessing. Gratitude turns life itself into a form of worship. So start each morning with a grateful heart. Don't wait for everything to be perfect. Gratitude is not the result of happiness, it is the cause of it. Look around you, look within you, and see how much you already have to be thankful for. When you begin the day in that spirit, you not only honor the gift of life, you inspire others to do the same. Gratitude is the light that transforms every morning into an opportunity to live like a true believer, with peace, with purpose, and with a heart full of thanks. One of the most overlooked yet powerful reminders a believer must carry into every morning is to guard the tongue. The words that leave your mouth shape not only your day but also your destiny. Speech is not just sound, it is energy, intention, and reflection of the heart. Every morning you are handed a fresh page to write your story upon, and your words are the ink. Once spoken, they can never be taken back. A kind word can lift someone's soul, a careless one can break it. The believer understands that silence can be worship when words have no purpose, and speech becomes worship when it carries truth, kindness, and sincerity. Guarding the tongue is more than avoiding lies or gossip. It is about discipline of the soul. The morning is a moment of renewal, a time to remind yourself that your tongue must serve your faith, not your ego. When you start your day with remembrance and gratitude, your speech naturally aligns with goodness. But when you rush into the world without self-awareness, your words become unfiltered and reactionary. The believer who guards the tongue begins by choosing silence when tempted to complain, by choosing calm when anger arises, and by choosing prayers when anxiety whispers. Speech has the power to heal or to harm, to build or to destroy, to connect or to divide. What you say after sunrise can either bring you peace or regret by sunset. Every word carries weight. Even a simple "good morning" can be an act of kindness that brightens someone's heart. A sincere compliment can plant hope in a weary soul. Likewise, a harsh tone or careless insult can poison the peace of an entire day. That's why a believer does not speak just to be heard. They speak to add value, to reflect faith, and to remind others of goodness. In a world filled with noise, the tongue of a believer must become a source of calm, not chaos. When you begin your day conscious of what you say, you begin to master your emotions, because your words are mirrors of your inner state. The more you guard your tongue, the more control you gain over your thoughts, reactions, and desires. Guarding the tongue is also an act of humility. It means accepting that not everything requires your opinion, not every conflict needs your defense, and not every story deserves your voice. The wise know that silence can often protect dignity, relationships, and peace. The believer reminds themselves each morning that they will be accountable for every word uttered, whether in jest, anger, or arrogance. That awareness keeps the heart soft and the speech sincere. The person who guards their tongue guards their soul. Words are not merely sounds, they are seeds. Some grow into trees of blessing, others into thorns of regret. What you say at dawn may return to you by dusk, multiplied in ways you never expected. That is why believers start their day by seeking protection from falsehood, slander, and gossip. They ask for their tongue to be used only in ways that bring benefit to themselves and to others. When the tongue becomes a tool of goodness, the world around you changes. Your relationships strengthen, your reputation grows in respect, and your heart remains free of guilt. Guarding the tongue also means speaking truth when it matters, but doing so with wisdom. It is not silence in the face of injustice, but control in the face of temptation. It is choosing the right words at the right time with the right intention. That balance is what makes the believer's speech powerful, because it is guided by conscience, not by impulse. Each morning, remind yourself that your words can be a form of charity. A kind greeting, a forgiving response, a gentle reminder. All these count as acts of goodness. The believer who guards their tongue lives with fewer regrets. They don't have to apologize constantly because they've learned the power of pause, the wisdom of thinking before speaking. When your tongue is guided by patience, your day flows with peace. Every conversation becomes a chance to earn reward rather than sin. The person who guards their tongue builds bridges instead of walls, calms hearts instead of hurting them, and spreads light instead of darkness. So, as each morning arrives, remind yourself your tongue is a trust. Do not let it ruin what your heart has built. Use it to uplift, not to wound. Speak words that you would not be ashamed to hear again on the day of judgment. When you guard your tongue, you protect your faith, your peace, and your dignity. You transform ordinary mornings into sacred beginnings, days filled with wisdom, restraint, and purpose. That is how a true believer begins their day, with words that carry meaning, silence that carries peace, and a heart that carries light. One of the most powerful ways to start your day like a true believer is to spread goodness from the very first hour after you rise. A believer understands that their morning sets the tone for the entire day, not only for themselves but for those around them. When your first actions and words radiate kindness, positivity, and purpose, you create a ripple effect that extends far beyond your own life. Spreading goodness is not limited to grand gestures or heroic acts. It begins with the small, consistent efforts that reflect a heart rooted in faith. It starts when you wake up with gratitude, smile at those around you, and make the intention to be a source of light in someone's world today. Goodness is contagious. When you greet someone with warmth, when you offer help to a stranger, or when you simply choose to speak kindly, you awaken hope in others. Many people wake up every morning burdened by stress, pain, and uncertainty. But the believer carries a different energy, the energy of peace, compassion, and optimism. Even a brief encounter with such a person can change someone's mood, soften a hardened heart, or remind them that goodness still exists in this world. A true believer knows that every moment is an opportunity to give, to heal, and to inspire. Spreading goodness early in the day also disciplines your soul. It trains your mind to focus on service rather than self, on contribution rather than complaint. When you choose to help others, to smile instead of frown, To speak words of encouragement instead of criticism, you are strengthening your inner faith. Every act of kindness purifies your heart and draws you closer to peace. A believer doesn't wait for the world to become better. They take it upon themselves to make it better, one good deed at a time. The morning is the perfect moment to renew that commitment, because it's when the mind is most open and the heart is most receptive to goodness. Spreading goodness doesn't always require wealth or status. Sometimes it's a simple act, a sincere prayer for someone in difficulty, a message of encouragement, or listening to someone who feels unheard. Sometimes it's simply choosing to forgive instead of holding a grudge, or to let go of anger that poisons your peace. These seemingly small choices can have enormous consequences because they reshape your heart. When your morning begins with acts of kindness, your entire day becomes aligned with purpose. The believer realizes that kindness to others is not just charity, it's a form of worship, a reflection of faith in action. The one who spreads goodness early is also guarded against negativity. When you begin your day with intention to bring joy, to help, to uplift, you build a shield against the whispers of frustration, jealousy, or resentment. You start to see life through a lens of opportunity instead of complaint. The challenges you face later in the day seem smaller because you began with gratitude and generosity. You become a source of calm in a world filled with noise, a reminder of hope when others are consumed by despair. That's the power of beginning your day as a believer, with light in your heart and goodness in your hands. The Prophet once described that the best among people are those who bring the most benefit to others. This wisdom holds timeless truth. A believer who seeks to bring benefit in every morning interaction lives with purpose. They smile sincerely. They listen with compassion. They share without expecting reward. Such a person doesn't just live peacefully. They cause peace to blossom in others. And when they lay their head down at night, their heart is light because they've spent their day in service to goodness. So each morning, before the world pulls you into its rush, pause and ask yourself, what goodness can I give today? Maybe it's kindness to your family, respect to your colleagues, or empathy to a stranger. Maybe it's resisting anger when provoked, or choosing gratitude when tested. Whatever it is, remember that the smallest act of goodness can open doors of blessing you cannot imagine. The believer's morning is not just about prayer or ritual. It's about embodying the values that faith calls for. When you wake up each day with the mission to spread goodness, your entire outlook changes. You find peace in giving, strength in patience, and joy in service. Your life becomes a reflection of faith in motion. You don't just survive the day, you elevate it. And as you do, your light reaches others, guiding them to kindness, hope, and faith. That is how a true believer begins the day, with the intention to spread goodness in every step, every word, and every moment.